Good evening, listeners. This is Bless Radio. It's Tuesday evening and it's 6 past 6 UK time. This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. This is Saad here in Bromley in southeast London. And with me, as usual, is Gregory. How are you, Gregory? And how's the weather where you are?
Well, we are fine here, and the weather has been very, very warm or hot.
Hot and warm. Okay, here also, although I haven't seen the sun too much, although it's still been hot here, overcast, but definitely hot and muggy. This is in Bromley here in southeast London. So, listeners, welcome to the show. I'm sorry, somehow we've had a delayed start. I thought we were already started, but looks like we hadn't. So we are definitely live now. Hopefully you can hear us. And the aim of this show, as I say, is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And we have a topic for discussion every week, a new topic. The topic for tonight is atonement. Redemption of earthly sin. And you can join in the discussion with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life, explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter of fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, the topic we're discussing tonight in our discussion is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, as usual, I like to check in the dictionary the keywords in the topic for the show. And just to remind everyone again, the topic for the show tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. So the first word is atonement. And in the dictionary, it says the action of making amends for a wrong or injury. And the example they give given in the dictionary for that is he submitted his resignation as an act of atonement. Gregory, they've got a further definition, but before I look at that further definition, what do you say about this one, which is again atonement, the action of making amends for a wrong or injury?
Well, thanks for these questions. The topic itself, which says atonement, redemption of earthly sin. Before atonement can be discussed, should sin not be clarified before one now considers what has to be atoned for?
True. Actually, I was going to go into that. Or maybe we will deal with that first then. Okay, let's deal with that first. So look at the word sin. Okay, so again, in the dictionary, it says here, sin is an immoral act considered to be a transgression against divine law. And they give an example again. It says a sin in the eyes of God. So, okay, what do you say on that definition, Gregory?
One would say that these definitions are helpful. However, they are still so not very clear, explicitly clear as to what a sin really is. And in the sense that one can really hold on to many things and say, okay, here I have done that which is not right in accordance with so and so. So, and my consideration, that is where the challenge is, not being able to hold on to firmly that which is being discussed.
Right. So, okay, so, I mean, that is the whole idea of defining these things so we can get, everybody's on the same page and, you know, we are clear about it. So, okay, I'm just going to ask you actually, Gregory, would you like to define the word sin?
Well, as with everything, one must provide a framework from which, in quotes, sin can be understood. And that framework is that of the creation laws through which creation itself and therefore the constituents of creation came into existence. So with that, one may now say, whatever activity is carried out by any individual which violates these creation laws, that activity may be referred to as a sin.
Thank you for that. That's very clear. Let's say it's precise, and we still need to maybe understand what we mean by creation laws and so on. But now we have some framework, like you say, to look at and understand. Okay. So a violation of creation law. I think I heard what you say there. And yes, we need to know what is the creation law there. Okay, let me ask straight from that, Gregory. Is the creation law the same as divine law, like it said in the dictionary?
Yes, the creation laws are a manifestation of the divine laws in creation.
Okay, that sounds good. Yes, fine. So we know that in that sense that the Creator or God is I'm going to say source of the laws. Right. Now, what I'll do, Gregory, we just go through the other words because we know we're going to go deeper in this topic. So let's continue with the rest of the title. So again, the topic for tonight, listeners, is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. And we've looked at the word sin there. Now, I'm going to move on to Gregory. Let me just go to redemption then, because we said redemption of earthly sin. So in the dictionary, it says the redemption is the action of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil. And they have said here, in this example, God's plans for redemption of his world. So let me repeat that. Redemption, the meaning of redemption, the action of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil. How is that definition? I've got more to say, by the way, Gregory. So I just
you'll find that yes, these in quotes definitions are helpful, but the way they are aligned in the language which we use to convey the meaning, it is that way of alignment that really enables one to have a clearer meaning. When the word redemption is used, it gives an impression that something must have preceded before redemption is used. And that which precedes it is that of atonement.
Right. Okay.
So when one has atoned for something, it's as if one is then redeemed from it.
I see. So, okay, that's good. We're now sort of going through the steps. Okay. And I just want to look at another definition, Greg, again from the dictionary for the word redemption. It says the action of regaining or gaining possession of something in exchange for payment or clearing a debt. That sounds like a financial term, but maybe we can look at it spiritually as well. The action. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, most of these words or these word expressions What we are striving to grasp here are the intuitive meaning, because it is the intuitive meaning that conveys much to the inner personality, whereas that which you just mentioned when it refers to financial transactions, these are the mundane expressions. It also applies. But if one is able to grasp the intuitive meaning, then one can take it like what one will refer to like a metaphor that one is now able to use in many places.
Right. Yes, I can see that. That's right. Because as you can talk in the earthly level language, you can say, or earthly material sort of activities, and then there's, you could say, spiritual activities, and or what is behind it even. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So this, and we just have to get it in the right context. So yes, thank you. Um, okay, I now want to move on to the word atonement, and you said that was in between. You could say sin, redemption, then sorry, sin, atonement, and then redemption. So let's look at atonement. Now, atonement, it says in the dictionary, the action of making amends for a wrong or injury. And there's a further meaning as well, but I want to look at this one first. So the action of making amends for a wrong or injury. And Greggy, the example they have given here in the dictionary, it says he submitted his resignation as an act of atonement.
Well, again, these are only approximate expressions to convey a particular meaning.
Right. Okay. So, okay, approximate. Okay, fine. So we can just look at it like that, like you say. And then they give another definition on the atonement. It says, which is in religious context, they say reparation or expiation for sin. And again, they give an example there, an annual ceremony of confession and atonement for sin. So is that anywhere closer to the spiritual meaning there, reparation or expiation for sin?
The expressions are helpful. However, in the language in which it's used and in the context, it is still not precise enough. It's a bit on the nebulous side.
Right.
And so many things come up, and you wish to make clear cut what is it that atonement is.
Okay. So this is our task today, to go through this and get a clear understanding. So maybe I can ask you now, Gregory, about atonement. Then, how should it be? What should it mean? What does it mean then in atonement? Let's say in our context.
Well, in our context, we started with the noun, which we refer to as sin, by which we talked about the violation of creation laws. And now one is considering atonement, which one may now hold as any activity to make restitution of that which was violated. So whenever one makes a restitution of that which has been violated, then that activity is an atonement. And a very simple example, if one were to tie a knot in a particular activity, if that activity, in accordance with the laws of creation or the laws of nature, is now a sin, what then happens if that person unties that knot, then that process of untying that knot now becomes an atonement. For in the first instance, there was the violation of the laws of creation, and now making a restitution on that which has been violated.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this answer. And the picture you're painting is very, how can I say, helpful to understand now. Okay, and of course the last step he said is redemption. So so once you have you did a sin, let's say, and then you make restitution, making amends, and then so what happened after you've made the amends? I'm wondering in a way, what is redemption? What is the need for redemption? Because you
Once one has made an atonement, that means there was a knot which was tied, and that knot has been untied or severed. Then one has, you see, the process of severing that knot or untying that knot, if one puts it that way, that process is an atonement. And when that knot has been severed, when one has atoned, one now has been redeemed. Because you now find that that which was holding one, having gone through a process of restitution, that particular thread, that particular ignoble thread, is now severed, and one is now redeemed, free to make progress.
Yes, I can see that now. It's the end of the atonement, means that you have now redeemed. So
yes,
you can now move freely, as you said. Okay, that's good. Very good. Now, so that's a big question, Gregory, really. Why do we fall into sin? Yes, let's, I mean, I wanted to carry on a bit. Let's just go to that. Yeah, I'm even thinking aloud in my head what I'm saying here. So, yes, why do we fall into sin? It's even, I'm wondering why I ask this question. Yeah, so let me say it another way, Gregory. Can we fall into sin unconsciously? Let me say that way.
Can one fall into sin unconsciously? Definitely, yes.
Right. So, and unconsciously, we mean that we don't know we are doing it, right? And so, well, Gregory, it means that there's something we are sinning against. We are not aware of that somehow. And we talked about the laws of creation, which are also called laws of divine law. So, Gregory, what are the divine laws or laws of creation? How do we? Is it built inside us, the knowledge of these creation laws, or do we have to be taught?
Well, sometimes the questions are such that it is quite challenging to know which to take first.
I'm sorry. Okay, let me say it again.
So, if one will keep the questions simple,
yes,
and then sequential,
right,
then that will be helpful.
Okay, so what I will say, because I said about being unconscious of the laws, so we can do a sin unconsciously. So, which is we are
May, may
subtract.
I may I request we stop there?
Yes.
So one can have an instance of somebody doing that which violates creation laws unconsciously.
Right.
It is, in many occasions, you will hear that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And sometimes you yourself can come to injury through ignorance. That you are ignorant of it, or you are unconscious that certain things abound, and one should not have been in a particular area. In that case, there was no caution. That does not absorb one from the consequences or the responsibilities. So when you refer to unconsciously, one may be referring to laws which are intellectual laws, or laws which are creation laws. There are scenarios where one violates the intellectual laws, which one may refer to as sometimes conventional laws. And there are scenarios where one, through one's activities, because the spirit is not austere enough, violates the creation laws. The challenge has always been how to recognize the creation laws from the mundane laws or the bylaws, or like many will say, the traffic light laws or the council laws, which all these things are basically mundane, as different from the creation laws. You yourself will realize that the laws which are very mundane, many of them have been devised by the intellect, whereas the creation laws which we are referring to, the effect of the spirit of that which is the inner man, the effect it has, or the effect the spirit has as a lever in creation, on these creation laws, it is that which ties a knot or does not tie a knot. So in this particular case, one is differentiating between that which moves the inner man, which makes the personality a human personality. It is that core, that intuition, that is the lever that may violate the creation laws or not. And it is that that is referred to in this scenario as compared to the mundane laws in which, okay, you didn't pay your council tax on time and you have a penalty for being about 10 seconds late in paying it. So one has to differentiate very carefully of the violation of creation laws, which only occurs through one's intuition, and the violation of mundane laws, which occurs through non-observance of the earthly petty laws put in place.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer, Gregory. I've got much something else to ask on top of on what you've just said there. But before I do that, I just want to say to the listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushi. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell it www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And you're listening to Bless Radio. As I said, we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can hear the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. And of course, you can listen to our other shows, previous shows, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we're broadcasting on zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. And if you wish to join in the discussion with any questions or comments, the topic we're discussing tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. You can send in your questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, as I was saying, as you were talking before this, what I just said just now about the show, a couple of things came into my mind. Just to confirm and clarify, you talked about mundane laws and the creation laws, and sin or violation of, which we called violation of the creation laws, it's clearly not the same as breaking the mundane laws. So just to be clear, Gregory, if you commit break the earthly law, and I want to just say, what about stealing? They have an earthly law for that. When I say earthly, I don't want to use the word mundane for that, but what I mean is there's let's call it earthly law, because creation laws are not the same as earthly laws. So just to understand that, Gregory, is that a sin when you're stealing and you are caught by the earthly law? Is that a sin or not, compared to what we say with the the creation law? Stealing, I would say, would be a sin.
Well, as you very well know, whenever such are brought before, in quotes, a judge, there will be questions of what lies behind the thoughts, what lies behind that activity that was carried out. What normally happens, the expression stealing is used. But the intuition, what lay behind it, has not been well understood. And therefore, the word, oh, he stole or she stole, that means that person took that which didn't belong to them. And therefore, that becomes a sin. What many have really not looked into is what lies behind it. If in that particular case, someone took that which did not belong to him or her, the volition that lay behind it is different. Then you will find that the judge will take all this into consideration. But as in many cases, the intuition, all the things that lay behind a particular activity which we call stealing, has not been well understood. A very simple example, which many might have come to know, is that there are some who wish to study, to learn, and make as much effort to do so. However, within the systems of the earth, there are some others who hide that knowledge which they themselves have acquired from reaching out to others. From reaching out to others in the sense that he or she who receives of the knowledge of creation should make use of it and pass it on to others. But what you now have is that many have received and have not passed it on to others. And because of that, they violate that particular discussion we normally have, one for all and all for one. In that particular context, there are some who now, one way or the other, make preparation to avail themselves of that knowledge to be able to come to more clarity and to be able to be of use, not only for themselves, but also for others. These are the surrounding scenarios which many do not see, which the laws of creation also take into cognizance. So some of these things are seen by human personalities. We say, oh, this is it. I mean, the law says thou shalt not steal. That person has stolen. And therefore, they now go ahead and inflict a terrible sentence without understanding what lay behind it. So the divine laws or the creation laws take many things into consideration as compared to us. I mean, when one is referring to as to mundane laws, a very simple example again is there are people who, in their activities, had to remove some children in particular scenarios because in their own intuitions, they have been able to perceive that a particular child will come to harm. And have moved in such a way that that child was then removed from that scenario without the consent of the parents. Of course, the parents will say, oh, this child had been stolen. However, the intuition behind it was never examined. So when things then happened, maybe in the case of an earthquake or in the case of some catastrophe, that child was then protected. Only when the human spirit then looks back will it now sense the grace that permitted that particular activity to take place. And therefore, words, only when the intuition behind it is fully understood can one grasp the meaning. Else, in not grasping the meaning aright, that in itself is a violation of the creation laws.
Thank you for that explanation and answer, Gregory. Immediately we can see that things are, let's say, I don't want to use the word more complex, but more involved than what we might see on the surface. And the earthly laws may not consider that in their judgment, but the creation laws do. As you say, what lies behind it? The intuition can sense it, but the earthly laws or the judges, I don't know if they have that sensing. So we seem to be having two different systems working side by side. And then when we talk about sin, we're talking about the transgression, like you say, Gregory, or violation of the creation law, which we don't go to earthly court for that. So it's quite a, you could say, wake-up call to realize that that earthly justice doesn't necessarily align with the spiritual justice or the laws, creation laws. Now, I want to, there's another aspect, Gregory, when I put in this title here, which is the topic tonight, atonement, redemption of earthly sin. So my question on that, Gregory, is the sin only done on the earth? Because that's what you're referring to here. So are we talking that sin only happens on earth?
No. One may not say that the violation of the creation laws is only here on earth. There are many a personality that has severed, that doesn't have the earthly body. It's only when one has so-called the earthly body or within the neighborhood of the earth. That is the time one, or the scenario or the context where one talks of the earthly. However, when one has departed from the earth, that means the physical body is no more active in flesh and blood. One can still commit a violation of the creation laws, even in the process of departure from the earth to other realms within the world of matter. So Such things are or the violation of these laws, of these creation laws, basically could be within the world of matter, and doesn't mean it has to be tied to the earth alone. However, there are violations of these laws on the earth by the human personality, depending on his or her maturity.
Thank you for that. So I just want to go further there. And we know, Gregory, from our previous shows, the Grail message tells us that we know that we're living here on Earth in the world of matter. Then there's the next world when we pass on. You can call it ethereal world. And then there's beyond that, Gregory, we call it animistic world. And then beyond that is the spiritual world. So I just want to completely clarify that. So we can sin in this, let's call it the physical world that we know, the world of matter that there. So is the ethereal world also the world of matter? And so we can sin in there as well?
Yes, the ethereal world also belongs to the realm of the world of matter.
Okay.
But
yeah, sorry, go on.
It is, in quotes, independent of the world, of the earthly world that you and I are talking about. So the ethereal world, the vibrations of the ethereal world may have an impact on the earthly world. And the vibrations of the earthly world does not have such a strong impact on the ethereal world. By these two different categories, there are subdivisions. So it's not that when one has dropped the physical body, one automatically enters the ethereal world. There are very fine subdivisions that the human personality need to transit through, depending on his innate activities, depending on his inner maturity. But the more matured a human personality is, in accordance with the creation laws, the higher he or she is able to rise.
Thank you for that. And just to go to the further, like I mentioned, the other worlds in there, which is animistic and the spiritual world, can one sin in those worlds?
By the time one gets to the animistic world, the maturity is such that the human personality has adjusted itself, has gone past the ethereal, and is now in the animistic, and has adjusted itself to the processes in creation. There, such sins, in quotes, like one has mentioned, do not abound. Neither do we have such sins in the spiritual. For in the spiritual, it has matured enough, it has the human personality will have become self-conscious to be able to have reached the spiritual realm as a self-conscious human spirit. With that maturity, because it has adjusted itself to these activities, there sin do not abound.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I just felt it a good thing to point out because, or to understand about the concept of sin and where it happens. And you've painted the picture as well, why you wouldn't see sin in the higher realms, you can say, because the idea is to become more mature. And you only go to these higher regions when you're mature, or the moment you're becoming more mature. So that's and so you shouldn't be. Well, the capacity of sin gets not that you can lose your free will, but you're unlikely to fall into sin when you become more mature. So thanks for that. Now, Gregory, yeah, must every sin be redeemed?
Yes.
Okay.
Every sin must be redeemed, or one must make an atonement for every sin, in the sense that when there is a violation of these creation laws, through the creation laws itself, a thread is woven, which thread forms a knot. That knot, the radiations from such knots hold down the personality that initiated these threads spiritually or through their intuitions. That means that personality is unable to make further progress. Therefore, it has to find a way to make restitution. That way of making restitution or of atonement is to untie that thread which it had initiated. And when that thread has been untied or severed through its activities, then is able to move further away. For then it has been redeemed. So it is the human personality through its activities that ties a knot around itself through its activities, earthly or non-earthly.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I'm just going to remind listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. This is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And if you'd like to know more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And as I said, you're listening to Blessed Radio. We're broadcasting on blessedradio1.com. That's the number one, blessedradio1, the number one.com. Also, we're broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, the number one again, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day, also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space, Grail message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on zeno.fm/less radio 1. Again, the number 1. And Zeno is ZENO.fm/less radio 1, the number 1. And you can join in the discussion on the topic we're discussing is tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. You can contact us on our UK number with any questions or comments. The number is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Now, Gregory, I want to look at atonement more, and we know all of these actions and activities must align with the laws of creation. So what I want to look at now, Gregory, if a person has sinned, let's call him the perpetrator, him or her, and then against a person, we'll call them the victim, and the victim then forgives them for that particular sin, is that automatically a redemption in terms of the laws of creation, or do they have to take their own process?
There are two individuals involved. The perpetrator of this activity and the victim of this activity. If from the victim's side, through his or her intuition, it forgives that which had been done against it, which had brought so much harm against it, and deep within himself and herself has severed that connection intuitively, then that personality has provided so much for the other, for the laws of creation will still be fulfilled. The perpetrator who initiated that activity will still be a shareholder, and in accordance with the laws of creation, there will be the law of reciprocal activity, which could come here or hereafter or here again, depending on the time it takes to mature. However, if that particular initiator has made progress in making restitution by first allowing its intuition to come in, then because the intuition is now involved, coupled with the goodwill of the person who suffered harm, that will unite and provide an atmosphere or a surrounding around the person who initiated such an activity initially, such that when the returns come, the impact of these returns will be grossly lessened as compared to when this initial initiator has not made any atonement. For then, when the returns come, you find he or she is not protected, and its impact is likely to be shattering. And that is why it is good to send good thoughts out in all directions. Send good thoughts in accordance with the virtues, which virtues had been implanted within the human soul, within the human personality, such that these virtues will come to fruition. By such a manner, in cultivating these virtues, the human spirit makes protection for itself and also for others. Now, one can understand the discussion about one for all and all for one. For in such a way, one strives to protect the other. So it's not one-sided.
Thank you so much, Gregory, with that picture that you've painted there. You know, many people have a belief and they're taught to forgive people, you know, out of love, you can say. But so in some cases, when, as you know, there's always, as you say, we need to look at what is behind the action, you know, the motivation. And some may be acting according to their belief that they should forgive someone who sins against them. But, you know, you pointed out, Gregory, that the intuition has to be involved in that. So some people may just forgive because they have a belief that they should forgive. So does, Gregory, the redemption of this the sin by the victim, through forgiveness, where does, what I'm trying to ask here, Gregory, is when somebody has it in their belief that they should do that, is that the same, you could say, how can I put it? You know, because when somebody does it with their, let's say, fullness of their heart, I don't quite know how to put it. It's like they don't think about it too much. But when they're doing it out of their belief, so what is the effect of that, the difference between the two?
One had said a sin is more or less the violation of the creation laws, which creation laws have ensured that the virtues have been implanted in the human personality to cultivate, whether the virtue of steadfastness, of diligence, of courage, of skill, of humility, of compassion, of vigilance or alertness. These virtues, only when the intuition comes in, does it comes alive. So, when belief is discussed, only through vigorous practice which touches on the intuition, does it become a deed in creation. Else it is not a deed in creation, and such is not covered by the creation laws. And therefore, when one considers it very carefully, forgiveness of another because of one's belief if that belief does not dwell, does not impact the intuition, then it is the personal conviction is lacking. That is not what creation demands of the human personality. Creation demands life, which lies in deeds, which lies in intuitive activities. For it is these intuitive activities that are the lever that ensures that which a man or woman has sown is returned to it. So, in the case of belief, if it is done and it has an impact on the intuition, then there is conviction in that forgiveness and it holds. If it is done without a conviction, then it becomes a shade. It is really not alive. And only that which is alive in creation is of benefit to the human personality.
Thanks again very much for this answer, Gregory. And I think the picture has been painted much very clearly now, about the activity of the intuition being, we call it, the word essential is not even covering what I want to say really, but necessary, in part of in the activity of atonement and redemption. As you said, won't be alive if the intuition is not involved in whatever action we are taking. That's when it becomes a deed. So that's a very big point. So thank you for bringing that out. Now, Gregory, what about if the victim doesn't want to forgive? Can the person, the perpetrator, can still redeem?
Yes. If along the line, the perpetrator, in his or her intuitions, has felt the gravity of what it had initiated and strives in such a way to atone. It doesn't have to mean personally to the person who was offended, for that person who had been injured might have passed on in the process, and that person has severed itself and moved on. However, if there is genuine atonement that touches on the intuition, such that that person who initiated that scenario proceeds in such a way as to bring benefit, not only to himself, but also those around it. And by those around it, one is not referring to those who are on earth physically. For in the intuition, traverses, right? The activity of the human spirit traverses the earthly activities, traverses the ethereal activities, also traverses the animistic. For the intuition has the impact on the spirit, is able to make connection with the power streams which come from on high. In that particular scenario, if in striving to make atonement, that particular person, he who had done wrong, is able, through his intuition, to collect of the power that streams from on high and direct it to the person who has been offended, not only he himself, but to all others who fall within that category. Then the efforts which he or she makes here whilst on earth, even in the physical body, is able to do so much as to ensure that many come to benefit, and that is able to protect the human personality who initiated such a wrong activity at that particular time. But it's not as simple as it may sound, for it requires so much effort, so much spiritual alertness, so much vigilance, so much spiritual activity to be able to make provisions and to ensure those threats which it had initiated into existence, those threats are severed from himself or herself. And at the same time, considering all others also. And that is why many are advised to have earnest, good volition at all times, and to show everlasting love, and also so-called readiness to serve the other person. Again and again, this one for all and all for one comes into the context.
Thank you again, Gregory, for this answer. Now I'm thinking, Gregory, can another person pay for your sin, or each one must redeem his own sin?
As you well realize now that it is the human personality that has tied the knots around himself through his activities, which knots then holds him down. So, if you have tied knots within yourself and it holds you down, and intuitively you do not wish to have those knots severed because you supply it continuous energy, then no one can sever it for you because you continue to supply it with spiritual energy which holds you down. If, however, through personal suffering, you yourself have matured to that state, and in reviewing things, you find that such a state is despicable and you wish to move away from it, then you have entered a transitional state where all those of good volition are able to approach you. But in order to be able to assist you to move away from that particular state that you are now in. But the seed of moving away from that state must come from the individual himself or herself. Not until that individual realizes that most of the effort, most of the strength is expending in such a state does not bring meaningful benefit, then and only then will it start making atonement and wishes to get out of that environment. Then others may assist through very strong prayer. By prayer, one is referring to the direction, that means in others of good volition, of patience and perseverance, who wish to help others coming together, directing their power or the power they have accumulated of the streams of power that stream through creation, and focusing it on that particular personality in that state in which he wants transition to move away from there. But creation is such that the measures are balanced.
Thank you so much for this answer and picture again, Gregory. It's very clear and logical. And what I want to say, so continuing on that, is that many Christians believe that Christ came and died on the cross to redeem us, and it is also said, Christ said that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So where does that fit in with redeeming? Because they're saying you're answering that we should redeem our own sin, but maybe some sin we can't redeem ourselves.
Yeah. The very simple expression when he was nailed or crucified on the cross, there was, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Then one must ask oneself the question, in doing such an activity, it becomes a grievous sin in the sense of the violation of the creation laws. So when Christ had to intercede, forgive them, it became very clear, because it was the Father who sent Christ to show the way. And therefore, in rejecting Christ, in nailing him to the cross, crucifying him, that was a clear sign of rejection of the love that had been sent to show the way. And here Christ, being whom he is, had to intercede, not for himself, but for them that crucified him. And therefore, it's not right for many a person to say that having committed a sin against an innocent personality, now turning around and say, oh, that personality has come to take away my sins. For in accordance with the laws of creation, the human personality must untie itself. There is the reciprocal action. It is the human spirit who has tied the knots and had ensured that nothing can reach him or her deep within. It is the same human personality who has to make the atonement, has to untie the knot, and not some other person who is not involved in tying that knot. So most of such expressions are self-deceptions, for they lack the right understanding of what Christ meant or why he even came at all. If they are conscious and they are clear that he himself was sent by the Father, then if that comes to their intuition and it becomes conviction, then they will also know that it is they themselves who have tied a knot and therefore will have to untie it and not wait for another to untie it. That we violate the vigilance which is required of the human spirit, that we violate the alertness which is required of the human spirit in order to come to maturity.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for that answer. And I have another question from another angle with regards to this. So we know, Gregory, from the Bible, the story of Adam and Eve, where the devil was tempting them, and they fell for that, they fell for that, and that is said to be the beginning of the original sin or fall of man. And even it is said it is hereditary sin because it is passed on to the next generation. So first of all, Gregory, I've got two-part question in this, but I will say the two parts at the beginning and then just ask you to answer each one. So the first part is saying, what is this original sin, hereditary sin, the fall of man, starting from Adam and Eve? And then when the Christians who claim that Jesus came to die for us to remove our sin, maybe Jesus came to remove that hereditary sin, the fall of man, not the sin that you and I or others do, let's say, regularly, harming someone, whatever that is, but something that happened in the beginning with Adam and Eve, which has been inherited, as we say. So it's been passed down to every person after Adam and Eve. And so it is like the disease that we all carry, and that disease could not be removed by us. Somehow we are not capable of removing it, and how Jesus came to maybe remove this sin. That is, so there's two-part question. So I'll start again. The first part, Gregory, what is this original sin or hereditary sin?
The sin which you yourself have mentioned, and by saying we are referring to the violation of creation laws. That violation of creation laws, when it is referred to as the original sin, it only means that there must be a process which the human personality, through its activities, has violated. That process which the human personality has violated, which is in quotes, translated or transmitted from one to another, basically only refers to the misunderstanding of the laws of creation by not referring or by not making use of the intuition aright. The intuition, that's intuitive perception which strikes the human personality or which strikes the back brain and is then transmitted to the frontal brain. Once that intuition is not fully grasped and made use of, it becomes a challenge. Here we have that in order to be able to walk effectively here on earth, the movement is such that there is one's intuition, and then there is which strikes the back brain, and then there are the physical thoughts which has arisen in the frontal brain. These two, One's intuition and the intellect, they are supposed to work hand in hand and in harmony. Once we have the scenario where that harmony is violated through the overuse of one. By overuse, one is referring to the frontal brain. This can also come about when the spirit itself is not vigorous enough, is not alert enough, because it has become indolent. Hand in hand, because it has become indolent, you now have the expressions, the outer expressions of the human brain now take precedence. There is a violation of the creation laws, which stipulates that the intuition and these intellectual expressions must go hand in hand. That is the original. By original, one is talking of origin. So when you hear the expression original, consider the origin. That is the origin of the problem. And that is why it's called the original sin. But many do not see that expression origin. For when the spirit is vigorous, is alert, and is very mobile, the impression that it gives is able, as the master, picked up by the frontal brain and executed. So the spirit decides. The frontal brain becomes the chief executive. They are supposed to work hand in hand. For when that does not happen, that becomes the origin of the problem, the original sin. What has been given in the case of Adam and Eve is only an allegory to make it understandable to the human personality. For any time a personality reflects on that and allows its intuition to come to the fore, to ensure the intuition is very much alive, and to ensure that the human brain is able to grasp aright the intention of the intuition, then things tend to go in the right way. But in violating, in not allowing the intuitive impression to be expressed aright, that becomes the origin of the precipitation of the problems. Because it is the origin of that not working in harmony with the intuition, that becomes the so-called original sin, or that which is now inherited. For when you now have true birth, a scenario where the frontal brain takes precedence, this can be passed on from parents to children. And that becomes a challenge. And that is what is referred to. For those that who are hot-headed, who are quick of temper, the constitution of the body is such that these can be inherited. Those of hot blood, those who are cunning, all these things can be inherited. The key thing that one must always focus on is the harmony between one's intuition and the frontal brain. Once that is well taken care of, in which the intuition leads and the frontal intellect takes those intuition and expresses them to ensure they are fulfilled in accordance with the volition of the intuition, in accordance with the laws of creation, which laws of creation has granted that the virtues must be cultivated through these particular activities, whether these activities are those of steadfastness, of grace and modesty, of heroism, of courage and selflessness, or of skill, of wisdom or humility, of compassion. As long as the human personality, in walking through the intuition with the frontal brain, these virtues are made manifest. Then it becomes one for all and all for one. In that case, the original sin, which has upset the balance, will vanish.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this answer, Gregory. There's part two of that question, which I'm going to ask you in a moment. Just want to let the listeners know you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. If you are interested in knowing more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And you're listening, as I said, to us on Bless Radio. You can listen on these three websites. The first one is blessradio1.com. That's blessradio, the number one.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space live stream. That's for the live show. You can then listen also the next day to the recording of this show, again on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number one, space Grail message, space the topic of the show, which tonight is atonement, redemption of earthly sin. And thirdly, you can also listen to other shows also on YouTube in the past. Thirdly, we are also broadcasting on zeno.fm/Bless Radio 1. Zeno is ZENO.fm/Bless Radio 1, the number one. And the topic we're discussing tonight, as I've said already, atonement, redemption of earthly sin. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 07939641958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00447939641958. 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, we just talked about the original sin, the hereditary sin, and how it arose and how it went from, let's say, one generation to the next. And actually, I got another new question appear into my mind. But before I ask that question, Jesus said that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And maybe what you've just talked about, the original sin, we have some weakness, or the word I'm trying to use is, how can I say, disability, of which you have said is the intuition and the intellect are not working in balance. The intuition seems to be handicapped through the intellect becoming overactive. And so this has been inherited between, from one generation to the next. And maybe this is my guessing, I don't know, if, again, when the Christians think that Jesus came to redeem us, maybe that is...
May I comment? Because sometimes if the scenario becomes overstretched,
you're right,
some of the main points will be missed.
Right.
Just a quick correction. The intuition is not handicapped. The intuition remains. However, once you have the intellect not making enough effort to understand, all right, what the intuition has put across, that does not make the intuition handicapped. On the contrary, it is the intellect that is handicapped. One should make that clear distinction. Another scenario could be where the spirit is weak. That means it does not exert itself enough. Exert itself in the sense of striving to understand further more than that, or more than where it is. That tendency to investigate further where it is and what lies beyond that. It is that which drove out this human spirit germ out of paradise. Drove it out of paradise such that in going down to where the movement is a bit slower, is able to, step by step, gradually come to an awareness of its surrounding. And subsequently, in further investigation, to become self-aware. Self-aware in the sense of the virtues which have been implanted into it. They now awaken to be able to participate actively in full consciousness. That means we now have a scenario of self-consciousness, or a state of self-consciousness. That is what that particular expression stands for. If, however, in the process of striving to become self-conscious, it does not exert itself enough. Then, the other part, which is that of the intellect, for the intellect and the spiritual intuition are supposed to work hand in hand. You now have that of the intellect gains the upper hand, and the maturity which the spirit should have brought in to help the intellect in its further investigation of the impressions in the physical world, that becomes weakened. And in that state, you now have that scenario where the forms which are now generated by the frontal brain are so limited and are not in harmony with what it should have been doing. In that case, that one for all and all for one is violated. So you now have a scenario in which one may refer to as a quagmire. Much clarity can be found in this work in the light of truth, the Grail message. For there are lectures, there are writings which clearly and succinctly points out what this original sin is. But the original sin, which is now the over-cultivation of the frontal brain to the negligence of the spiritual impression, that imbalance, that is the origin, again, when it is referred to as the original sin. So the stress should be placed on the origin. By origin, one is referring to where. Where did this happen? This happens between the spirit, one's intuition, and the intellect. Once one has been over-cultivated, that which has been over-cultivated can be inherited physically. There is nothing like spiritual inheritance, but there is intellectual inheritance, which is passed on depending on how the physical body has been utilized. She can be passed on from a parent to a child. It is only a tendency. So the original sin, again and again, is referring to the intuition one sees is the origin. That word should not be omitted. The origin, the place where the battle is, where the disharmony is precisely what has been described. More can be found in the work In the Light of Truth. There, in all simplicity, the explanations is laid bare.
Thank you, Gregory, for that answer, and clarifying these concepts in these events that have taken place. Of how man came to stand where we stand now. So, Gregory, I would like to look at atonement again a bit more. atonement, you said, is restitution. Um, so, Gregory, if somebody I say just, if somebody says sorry or even resigns, as one of the examples I was reading in the meaning in the dictionary, would that, for whatever, let's say, wrong they did, uh, is that really a is that a atonement?
When one might as well ask, sorry, what is the intuition behind sorry? If one knows, or if one is clarified of the intuition which lies in that expression, sorry, then if that intuition resonates in the creation laws, then that in itself is restitution. If, however, it is only an empty word and does not resonate in the creation laws, then it is not restitution.
Thank you for that. So everything, like we have said already, Gregory, it has to be alive and living, not merely the words. It has to the intuition has to be involved in the whatever we say or do, and if it is not, then it's not real. So,
well, that is the case. One might also consider here we are in our discussion of the laws of creation, of the work in the light of truth. Then it is justifiable when anyone asks, what is the intuition behind these activities? If deep down within us, for many who listen and many who participate in the discussion, if deep down the intuition resonates within the laws through which we all came into existence, then it is of benefit spiritually to all who participate. If not, then it is not of benefit. For only that which is of intuition has an impact on the power streams that streams from on high in accordance with these laws through which we all came into existence.
thank you for that, Gregory. I want to ask another question. I know we come to the end of the show, but I just want to put this question here. Must redemption take place voluntarily, or can it be enforced by God or by the laws, creation laws?
Creation laws, those who wish to make redemption, that initial or that prompting must come from the human personality. What creation does is to return those traits to the person who initiated them. That process of returning these traits to the person who initiated them, that is the so-called enforcement by himself, who placed the power, who placed the love, and above all, who placed the laws in creation. That is the enforcement to ensure that each individual tastes of that which they themselves have placed in creation. So one may talk of that as an enforcement. However, the individual must strive to ensure that the activity is genuine.
Thank you so much for that. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. The topic we discussed: atonement, redemption of earthly sin. Um, I'd like to end with again, like I normally do, uh, reading the foreword of the Grail message, which is titled "For Your Guidance." The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I am addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God, Abdushin. So, dear listeners, if you want to pick up the Grail message or want to know more information on the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing them a beautiful week.
Thank you for that. And the same from me, listeners. We'll be back again next Tuesday, as usual, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. I wish you also a great week. God bless. Good night.